shit.
Up all night. Staying up all night. Up all night.
What is up? I am Reggie, co-founder at Mantry. This is the Mantry podcast. The goal of this podcast is to help you cook better. And today we're talking about 5 easy tips for a perfect pan sauce. So let's jump right into it. I mean, what is a pan sauce? A pan sauce is basically a quick sauce you can make after searing off a bit of meat or fish in your frying pan. So first things first, you want to start with either a regular frying pan or a cast iron pan. Anything that's non-stick when you sear something like a pork chop or a chicken breast or a skirt steak isn't going to give you that caramelized brown good stuff that you get stuck to the bottom of the pan. So make sure you use a typical cast iron pan or a regular frying pan, not non-stick. So the first step, there's 5, very simple. First step is just to brown the meat. And you do this by a little bit of grapeseed oil or vegetable oil even, and you can get your pan smoking hot, season up your meat. Like we said, pork chop, skirt steak works great. Throw it down, don't move it around too much, let it develop that crust. And then flip it once. And again, don't mess around or move it around too much. Just let it develop that crust. So once your meat's actually done and you pull it out, you're going to have this brown caramelized base in your pan. That's what the French call fond. It means base, but basically it's just all that caramelized residue that sits in the bottom of the pan. So at this point, you have a choice. You can add some aromatics. That's a typical step in making a pan sauce. So some shallots, some chopped onion, some chopped garlic, and you can kind of sweat those down really quickly, maybe for a minute or two. But if you don't have any of that stuff, you can just skip to step number 3, which is to deglaze with wine or stock. So deglazing is a step where you basically lift all of that caramelized goodness from the bottom of the pan, and you do that by pouring in some good red wine or some good white wine. Always wine that you're willing to drink. Don't ever cook with quote-unquote cooking wine from the grocery store, or a little bit of stock. And this is going to pull off all that stuff off the bottom of the pan, and you're basically going to be left now with like a dark, kind of juicy looking runny sauce. And we can add the final 2 ingredients to it, which is going to take it from sort of a nice little liquid that you have there to a real sauce. So the next step, the French love this step. It works beautifully. It's the reason why so many great restaurants have these beautiful shimmer on their sauce. It's to add cold butter. It's called monter au beurre. That's basically French for adding butter. And by adding cold butter, it helps the sauce emulsify, so sort of come together. Like if you think of mayonnaise or something, it's an emulsification that's really, really emulsified. Whereas with adding cold butter, it sort of does a gradual emulsification where obviously it's not going to tighten up like mayonnaise, but it's going to be bring everything together. It's going to be sort of more cohesive as a sauce. So a couple pats or knobs of cold butter that you swirl around off the heat will really bring it together. And the reason you always add your butter to a pan sauce off the heat is so it doesn't split on you over too high of a heat. So pull the pan off the heat, add the cold butter. And then the final step, real simple, as always with making anything taste good, simple progression. You've got the butter, and now you're going to finish with fresh herbs and salt. So fresh herbs, you can use a combination like chives, parsley, chervil, tarragon. You can use basil if you have it. You can use one of those on the own. If you just have parsley, throw that in. But the idea is always hit it with a little bit of fresh herbs. It really wakes up the sauce, and swirl that in, and always add a little bit of seasoning. So a tiny bit of salt. You've heard us talk about Diamond Crystal Kosher salt here before on the podcast. That's a great product for seasoning. And you can just season it up at the very end, just a little pinch of salt, and you can add a touch of acidity at this point too, like a squeeze of lemon juice. That can kind of brighten up the sauce as well. But that's it. You're done. It should only take like 2 minutes to do all these steps. And so basically the first step being brown the meat. And then to make the sauce, the next step is obviously you pull the meat out of the pan, add your aromatics, your chopped shallots, onion, garlic. The next step after that, deglaze, so a little bit of wine or stock in there to pull off all that caramelization on the bottom of the pan up into the sauce. Next step, number 4, add a little bit of cold butter and swirl it around off the heat so that you can kind of emulsify in that butter. And the 5th and final step, finish with some fresh herbs and some salt. And you've got then a quick and easy pan sauce that you can use for pork chops, skirt steak, chicken breasts. You can use it for fish. It's a simple, easy technique, and it will take your cooking to the next level. So thank you for listening today. We have an accompanying blog post of this in the show notes. I'm Reggie. I'm a co-founder at Mantry. That's what this podcast is all about. We hope you picked up a couple tidbits here that you can take back into your kitchen, and we hope you cook better. Thanks for listening.
Up all night.